This is California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. I'm glad you're going to be with us over the next half hour. We'll be speaking with Gil Stork. Mr. Stork is the president of Cuesta College, one of 112 community colleges in the beautiful state of California. We'll be speaking with him as essentially a native of San Luis Obispo County. He attended Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, wound up teaching at Cuesta in the earliest days of the college. We'll talk about the rise through Cuesta administration, ultimately to the presidency. We'll talk about the challenges facing community colleges like Cuesta and the other 111, and also a current crisis at Cuesta. It is currently under an accreditation crisis, I guess you could call it, but I'm sure Gil Stork will do his best to make that go away with due alacrity, and we'll talk about that, no doubt. Before we talk about the challenges facing community colleges as well as Cuesta, I want to talk about Gil Stork himself. How did you become all but a native of San Luis Obispo County?
Well, you know, it was through I guess just good luck,
right?
You know, it started from a tragedy, but it was a gift that I got, and you know, from my parents' divorce when I was 6 years old, and we were living in Ventura, California. My mom and my sister and I moved up here because my mother had a good friend that lived in Avila Beach.
And this is in the 50s?
This was in 1949.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you really have grown up in San Luis Obispo County.
So I went to first grade in Avila Beach, and then we moved into San Luis Obispo and started at second grade on.
You attended San Luis High School.
Yes, I did.
You matriculated to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. And you had a remarkable ride while a student at Cal Poly. You were a math major, you were a football player, you played center for Cal Poly, but I would be remiss if we didn't mention that you were one of the survivors of the infamous plane crash in Toledo in 1960. Why don't you hearken back to that really horrific day where you lost so many of your friends and colleagues?
Mm-hmm. Well, it was the day began horrific when we got beat very badly.
Yes, that's the worst thing of all.
By Bowling Green University, who was one of the top small colleges in the country at that time, and so we had a long bus ride from Bowling Green back to Toledo, Ohio, from where we were taking off, and it was ground zero fog condition, and we were concerned about whether we were going to be able to leave. And so I remember sitting on the plane while we were waiting for getting approval from the pilot to take off, and our coach came back on the plane and said, yeah, we're ready to go, we're going to give it the old college try. Mm-hmm. And so then on departure we started to taxi down the runway, and there reports that I read later, there were witnesses that said the plane started to veer off the runway and cross over the runway lights, and eventually the pilot made a decision to lift off before there was adequate ground speed, and when we were about 200 feet off the ground, the left side engine quit and the plane flipped over and crashed on the runway, and that's when all the havoc began. 22
people were killed. 26 survived. Amongst the dead, 16 of your teammates. I can't imagine how it impacted you even over 50 years later. I would presume the survivor's guilt still is with you today.
Not as much as it was. I went through a period of about 5 years afterwards where I was really confused. Number one, you know, I really questioned my faith. You know, how could a loving God, you know, cause something like this? And so I had a lot of anger. Then it shifted to the survivor guilt, because there were some wonderful people that were killed, people who had amazing athletic careers in their midst, in the futures. We had a receiver who was being courted by the 49ers, and his life was taken.
But you stayed steadfast, and you stayed committed to the sport of football, to education generally. You ultimately graduated from Cal Poly as a math major. You went to San Luis High School, your alma mater. You taught there for a couple of years. You were the football coach. You were the baseball or basketball? Baseball coach. And then in 1965, a community college opened in your community called Cuesta.
Yeah. My senior year in high school is when the former junior college lost its accreditation.
Oh no, and we'll talk about accreditation later on in the program.
Lost accreditation and it closed. And so for...
What was it called?
It was San Luis Obispo Junior College.
Got it.
And so there was a period of time in San Luis County where students who wanted to go to community college had to go to one of the neighboring community colleges. And so the voters in 1963 approved the creation of a new junior college district, and then by 1965, with a site chosen at the old Camp San Luis Obispo, we were in barracks, and we started.
And is that where you still are today?
We're on that site, but of course
Because
we have a modern built campus.
Beautiful. It is
very
bucolic. Nice. It is serene. And you joined that campus, I believe, in 1967?
1967. I was 26 years old and thought I knew everything.
And you probably did. You probably knew more now then than now. But let's talk about...
I wouldn't hire a 26-year-old now,
okay.
you know. So.
Be that as it may, you were the assistant football coach while teaching math.
Right.
And you stayed in that position for about 5 years. You became the head coach?
No, I was an assistant. And then when the head coach became athletic director, I went out with him and I said, I just need to focus on my teaching. So.
And you decided to focus on teaching for about a decade, but then in the late 70s, you made the move into administration.
Yeah. When we had a change of presidents in 1977 and the former vice president became the new president, he'd been kind of my mentor.
Sure.
And encouraging me to look for opportunities. And so a dean position opened up and he said, you ought to think about that, you know. Every time he said that, then I'd start thinking about it, you know. So then I applied for that and became the dean of science and mathematics and athletics, and I knew that was the right thing. It felt good.
In the late 80s, you went even further.
Yeah, we had a change of presidents in 1989, and the new president came in and wanted a third vice president position in student services, and she encouraged me to apply for that. And so I moved into the student service side and served in that for 14 years.
And in 2004, you attempted to retire. It hasn't gone very well. Your retirement has not been very successful.
No, I beg to differ with you. My interpretation of retirement is having choices.
Choices?
Being to choose what you're passionate about. And I chose to stay at Cuesta and teach part-time in the math department as a retiree and serve in some administrative capacities.
Some?
Yeah,
some administrative, like the presidency?
Well, that wasn't in the cards at that point, but we were going through a period of time where we had a lot of turnover and people leaving and new people coming in, and so I served in some interim dean roles, but we were also having turmoil at the top.
That would be an understatement. In 2006, Cuesta lost its president, and there were a series of interim presidents, and ultimately you became an interim president in January of 2010, leading to your ascension as the president in November of 2011. Great retirement, no doubt.
Well, it wasn't planned that way, you know, and so, but you know, I believe in opportunities and looking at what the opportunity has in store for me, what the challenges are, and what kind of change agent I can be.
Think about this. I mean, you were one of the first professors at that institution, and at a time when it really needs strong leadership, you're back. I mean, I got to think it's incredibly affirming, invigorating. You're facing challenges, but you're facing them head on, and that's what we'll talk about, President Stork, when we come back. The challenges facing community colleges generally, and then the challenge facing your institution, Cuesta College. We are speaking with Gil Stork. He is the president of Cuesta College in San Luis Obispo County. I'm Brad Pomerance. We'll be right back on California Edition.
In which category are Americans carrying the most debt? Car loans, credit cards, or student loans? Student loans. According to the New York Fed in 2012, student loan debt load tops $870 billion. Debt load for cars hits $730 billion, and for credit cards comes in at $693 billion.
It's California Edition. Welcome back. Our guest today is Gil Stork. He is the president of Cuesta College, a community college in San Luis Obispo County, one of 112 community colleges in the state of California. As you know, sir, the state of California has been suffering through a budget crisis, and that has hit community colleges in a very significant way. Over the academic year 2011-2012, community colleges saw the steepest spike in the nation in terms of tuition, 37%. What do you make of that?
Well, first of all, you have to look at it from a historical standpoint. Good or bad, I've been through 5 recessions in California, all of which have impacted the California community colleges. We thought Proposition 13 in 1978 was the most devastating because it changed the whole tax structure of how we were funded. But this one is very different. And what makes it so different is how long it's prolonged. Normally a recession, maybe 1-2 years, and we would find a rebounding time. But we're well into year 4 and going on to year 5.
It is a remarkable downturn. I mean, I guess technically we're not in recession, but the malaise is there. You can feel it in the air. I mean, it does feel like things are getting better, but every so often a report will come out that makes us feel as if maybe it's not getting better. What's interesting about the tuition spike of 37% is that at the same time, California still has the lowest tuition for community colleges in the nation. Yeah. And for many, that makes community college administrators nervous because even though it's spiking, it's still much lower than the rest of the nation. I mean, over $2,000 less than the national average. So I got to think that makes community colleges a target.
Well, and you're seeing that with all of public higher education, with the California State University system, the University of California.
But at least with those systems, their tuitions are amongst the highest in the nation now, and so it's easier to argue, no, don't spike anymore. But when you're the lowest,
and those systems have the ability to raise their own fees. The California community colleges do not have that ability. It's a California legislature which sets the fees. So we have no local control over the ability to increase fees. We have no state control to do that. So that's one of the hampering parts of our system, is our inability to generate new income. And you can't have a Proposition 13 in California and low fees and expect to be able to fund education.
And what's frustrating for so many students and their parents is with fees and tuition rising at the UC and CSU system, they're being told, well, why don't you go to community college for 2 years and then you can transfer to the UC, get your AA in 2 years, everything will be fine. The problem is that fees are rising at community colleges and classes and sections are being cut. So these students can't graduate in 2 years. They're having to stay longer than 2 years. And so the cost savings is questionable and their lives are put on hold.
That's exactly right. We're getting people who are stuck in the system at a time when we're actually attracting a greater new kind of population than before. Even though high school graduation rates are on a decline because there are fewer high school seniors in the state of California, we have a growing population of unemployed who are looking for the community college to be retrained and retooled for new careers. We have a large returning veteran population now that we're reducing the troops in the Middle East. So we have the vets coming on the new GI Bill, and they're coming back to start their life again, many of whom are also coming back with a lot of need for support, emotional
post-traumatic
support.
Stress.
Exactly.
As you know, in January of 2012, the governing board of the community college district statewide passed 22 reforms. And a lot of those reforms go to exactly what you're discussing. That being, there's going to be a strong preference for students who are looking for an AA, who are looking to transfer, who are looking for career training. And at first blush, that seems like a positive step, but by definition, that squeezes others out. Possibly moms who want to go back to school, English language learners. And so the face of community college, I mean, the days of the senior citizen taking ceramics may be over.
Yeah. Well, we've already done some of that. You know, we have now taken our community programs, which used to be funded with state dollars, and now those have become self-supporting.
Through your foundation?
No, they're by fees.
I see.
So it's a consumer-paid process. So we have to focus on transfer preparation, career development, and basic skills. But the problem is, with open access to the California Community College system, we are still a come-as-you-are college.
Right.
We take people wherever they are, in whatever stage of life they are, and we help them find a direction. Not everybody comes to us knowing what they want to do. And so my concern about some of the, even though I believe in the recommendation made, there's still room and still needs to be room for that person who needs time to explore, to find out what it is they want to do, and then put them into a program of success.
And some of those people who are looking, who are investigating, will look towards the summer. It may be a quieter time, they may be a parent, the kids are at home, they're in camp, there's a little more flexibility. But we know that many of the 112 community colleges are cutting summer classes. I mean, in the summer of 2012, more than a third reported less summer courses, 8 plan no summer courses. In 2011, 2/3 reported cutting at least 50% of their summer classes. I mean, that's a problem not only for the returners, but for students who are trying to get out in 2 years. But I understand Quest is taking a different approach.
Yeah, and I think you have to look at each college individually and the role it plays. Now, one of the first decisions I made when I came in 2010 was to cancel summer session in 2010, primarily because the news we were getting, we got late news about budget reductions for 2010-11, and we had already amassed the amount of enrollment that we would get paid for, so summer would have been a total expense with no income to support it. So I made that decision. It was devastating. It was devastating for students who needed certain courses to be prerequisites for courses they were going to take in the fall, especially our nursing students. It was difficult on veterans who had to maintain a certain course load to keep their benefits going.
But in the summer of 2012, a different approach.
A different approach, and it's all driven by the way we're funded. We're funded by the number of students that attend the college, full-time equivalent students. And therefore we have a magic number we have to hit. There's also a magic number that we are close to that will qualify us as, we're considered a small college, but we could hit a threshold that would qualify us for a medium college.
So you're looking to hit that threshold by actually increasing your summer course load.
Right, because that will give us an infusion of $3 million over the next 3 years.
Speaking of funding, I want to ask you about a plan that had been proposed by Santa Monica College. I'm sure you're familiar with the plan, whereby there would have been a nonprofit foundation that offered in-demand classes at $180 a unit, which is significantly higher than the $46 a unit. Tremendous consternation over this plan. Some saw it as forward-thinking, others saw it as class warfare. It ultimately went down in flames because of the public outcry. What's your sense of the plan? I mean, kudos for thinking out of the box, or bad move, that's class warfare?
Well, I would have to give credit to Santa Monica for trying to come up with a solution that worked. I just think the solution was not a good one. It divided the concept of what a community college is, and it divided a population, and it created the image of a class system. And so that particular alternative I felt was not a good one to be a general solution to the issue.
So when we come back, I want to speak with you about the current challenge facing Cuesta College. The accrediting organization has Cuesta College in its sights. It has had it for a few years, but you are doing your best to make sure that Cuesta retains its accreditation. It's a long process. That's what we'll talk about when we come back. His name is Gil Stork. He is the president of Cuesta College, a community college in beautiful San Luis Obispo County. We'll be right back.
Which California community college maintains the largest student population? The American River College in Sacramento, City College of San Francisco, Santa Ana College, or Santa Monica College? City College of San Francisco maintains the largest student population in the California community college system.
Welcome back to California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. Our guest, Gil Stork, he is the president of Cuesta College, a community college in San Luis Obispo County. Recently, the college graduated 738 students, earning a total of 858 degrees. It was a beautiful day, of course, in San Luis. The challenge, though, is that Cuesta College is in the eyesight of the Accrediting Commission right now, and it has been actually for a good 3-4 years. Talk to us about what has gone on over the last, 8 years that has caused the Accrediting Commission to really focus on Cuesta.
Well, actually, we have to go back 10 years.
10 years,
okay.
Go.
The Accrediting Commission, the process occurs for a comprehensive review every 6 years.
Okay.
So, and what's called a comprehensive review, in which all the standards are addressed. So the college does a self-study, does a self-reporting of what and how it is meeting the compliance, and then the visiting team comes in, validates what we say we're doing against what actually is happening, and we have to show a lot of evidence. So in 2002, we had a comprehensive visit. This is just before I retired, and we were reaffirmed at that point. But there was about 7 or 8 recommendations that we needed to work on. I retired and went away and did my thing, and
in 2006, it seems like that's when really the ball got rolling on the challenges.
Yeah, there were some things starting to evolve during that time. There was a change of presidents in 2006. The accreditation liaison officer, who was a vice president, and another vice president were asked to leave. And suddenly the college was in the throes of an interim president, vacancies at the vice president level, at the dean level, and right around the corner was a 2008 comprehensive visit. When that visit happened, the college was placed on warning because many of the things that were cited in 2002 had not been addressed adequately.
There were 9 recommendations.
That's
correct.
what
we want to call them.
Yeah.
And then in 2010, that number dropped to 4.
Yeah.
So
what happened then in that visit in 2008, then in January of 2009, the commission met and put the college on warning. So in October of 2009, a follow-up report was made. And then in January 2010, the commission put the college on probation.
Ah.
Okay, and that's when I came in.
And is that when there were 4 categories that were?
There were still 7 at that point. Yeah, and so then we worked on those, went through another cycle, and it went down to 4. So we got relief of 4 of those, and then we went through another cycle, and 2 more of those were taken care of, and the last 2, which had to do with integrated planning and planning for technology, were still on the book. The most important thing, though, that even though the college had made significant progress, and even though there were 2 outstanding recommendations, under the rules of the U.S. Department of Education, which controls all of the commissions, we had extended beyond what they considered an allowable time period of 2 years. So once you hit that 2-year mark, the sanction ratchets up more quickly. And so part of the purpose of going to show cause was we'd exhausted that 2-year limit.
And that's where you are right now.
Right. We're on a status of what's called show cause, which means that we have to demonstrate to the commission that we've done enough work and we have satisfied the standards to the degree possible that they should not consider not reaffirming our accreditation.
And I understand they're looking at, I think it's 3 areas: planning and assessment, technology resources, financial planning and stability. Is that accurate?
Well, there are 3, but 2 of them were the ones that we were placed on show cause for, and that was the technology and planning. We still have to comment on our stability because everybody's in this instability stage given the finances in California.
And so you are looking to convince this commission that you have satisfied their requests. You won't know until 2013 whether you have been placed off show cause. Is that the way to say it? Yeah. Although your view is it's likely that you, at a minimum, would be extended just because of the cycle that you would still need to show that the progress has been made. Now, obviously, the sanction of closure is devastating. It happened to Compton College in 2006. And as part of this process, you do need to go through a scenario whereby you'd have to demonstrate how you would go through a closure.
Yeah. Part of the requirements of when you are placed on show cause is that you have to develop what's called a report on institutional closure. Because what you have to do is you have to prepare the college, district, and the community for the inevitability of losing accreditation, which means what do you do with your facilities? How do you account for the student records? What if a student 5 years from now wants to get their transcript? How does that happen? You have to plan for the layoff of all your faculty, all your classifieds and administrative staff. And so it's a big process.
So how are you doing? I mean, this has got to be a very challenging time, especially being, you know, such a booster of Cuesta College there from almost the beginning.
Well, I can't really blame anybody but myself in terms of...
That's noble of you.
I mean, I took this job knowingly exactly where we stood.
Oh, I understand.
And I wouldn't have taken it had I not felt that I could help solve the problem and get us on track again. And part of it was putting the people in the right places, having the right training, and being able to advance the college and understanding what the new standards mean. It used to be that we viewed accreditation as an event that happened every 6 years. Today it's a day-to-day operation.
And the challenge becomes, while you're going through this process, you, Cuesta College, like virtually every other community college, are facing budget shortfalls. In fact, I understand that in April of 2012, you were forced to eliminate 26 positions. You are looking at furloughs. I mean, wow, I mean, it's just the kitchen sink is being thrown at Gil Stork.
Yeah, well, as the state economy has suffered, you know, so has the funding for higher education and the community colleges. So we have reduced our operating budget from $52 million in 2008-09. Now we'll be at around $46 million.
It's a well-known story. I mean, I hear this from presidents of community colleges throughout the state.
Yeah, and we're a human-intensive industry. So when you have 85+% of your budget in people, you can only cut discretionary items so many times, and then it's people.
When we look back to 2006, when the former president was asked to leave, many people believe that one of the reasons that she suffered that demise is a bond measure for Cuesta did not pass. And that, some would argue, was kind of the beginning of the misery that we're facing right now. You're looking, though, at putting a bond measure on the ballot in the next 2-3 years. Talk to us about the thinking behind that. It's, you know, many districts will do that, but right on the heels of this crisis, do you think the voters would be generous or frustrated?
Well, I think the voters they should be disappointed if we're not looking at how do we preserve a huge public investment in colleges and universities. Because when you build a college and you develop the infrastructure for it, you have to also refurbish it. It takes efforts in order to keep it current. That's where we're at. Our main campus in San Luis Obispo, most of the buildings were built before technology even existed. And so besides just the infrastructure to meet the technology changes, we have heating and air conditioning units, we have roofs, we have other aspects that are deteriorating, and the state is no longer funding deferred maintenance anymore.
And so while you are going through the accreditation process, you are also planning for a bond measure.
Yes, we are.
It is a remarkable ride that you are engaged in during your retirement that really never occurred. And I want to thank you, Gil Stork, for joining us on the program, and really thank you for what you have done for your community of San Luis Obispo. Like you said, you've been here since 1949. It is a storied career, a career that almost was cut short in a tragic plane crash, but thankfully you are with us 51 years later and will be with us for God knows how many more. We wish you the best of luck in the accreditation process and on the bond measure. My name is Brad Pomerance. Our guest has been Gil Stork, the president of Cuesta College. Thank you so much for watching California Edition.